But it's about trust, Rob. And people have lost trust and faith in the government and their ability to execute, even the messaging that's coming in terms of, can I build a house here? Yes. Are you sure? Because is EPA going to approve me? Is my septic tank the right size? Is it parental? Is it not? Even though the answer is yes, there's so many derivative questions, they're unanswered. There's no real yes or no. And so that's the problem I was trying to solve with REALFacts. Be the source of truth. Be the trusted place where you can go and get expertise.
Hi for day, it's your innovation coach, Rob Jackson, and welcome to another edition of the Innovate Guam Podcast, the podcast where we explore all things innovation, technology, and improvement related to the island of Guam. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Substack. My podcasts drop at the beginning of each week. Also, be sure to check out my Innovate column in the Pacific Daily News every other Friday of each month. Today, we are back on site at Beans and Barrels for the second episode of our new once-a-month entrepreneurship series. The whole idea behind this series is simple. We want to sit down with Guam's entrepreneurs in a real business environment and talk honestly about the good, the bad, and the ugly of building a business here on Guam. And I'm excited again to have my friend Charlie Hermosa back as the guest host for this series. Charlie, welcome back.
Well, thank you so much for having me again, be part of this amazing podcast.
All right. So you want to tell us anything about this this venue and this spot and what's going on at with B&B?
Yeah, no, so right now, one of the things that we like to do is actually, we get a lot of feedback from our customers. And so one of the things that we really are really hard set on is making sure that the customer service level is, above and beyond what anybody would expect. So with that comes along and making sure that we get feedback from our customers, whether they like our food, or like our drinks, the way we smile, our price points. And, we take that into consideration, and on a daily basis, we're constantly trying to ensure that level of customer service is there. And so we're pivoting with, changing some of our recipes, Now we can't do everything for everybody, right? But definitely, we're getting to a point where, I think the customers are very open to giving us feedback, and we really take that to heart. And so I think that with any entrepreneur, I think that one of the things that I've always said is, we fall in love with what we're creating, right? And we think it's the best thing. We think that, it can't fail, it can't do anything, and you fall in love with it. And sometimes there's a lot of entrepreneurs that unfortunately have failed because they fell in love with it and they weren't really open to suggestions, to making maybe slight tweaks to the product.
They went into their own bubble.
Yeah, this is my product.
Yeah.
The other one also that's been very, that I've seen a lot of cases is where I attended a seminar where the founder of Twitter was given a speech, and the one thing that there was two things that I took away from that. One was if you wait for your initial product to be perfect, you're never going to launch.
Yes.
That's number one. And then the second one was you have to be open to sharing your idea with the world because you want to be able to get that feedback. So people will ask me, oh, what did you put in this pizza, right? And I feel like I have a great dough, I'm using New York style, so I'm like, but I tell them. And so what he said was, unless you're inventing the cure for cancer, everything has been already thought about. So I'm sure, the recipe that I'm using is nothing new or nothing else. And so, but if I share, maybe they come back to me and say, well, why don't you add a little bit more of this? And I go back and I look at it. But if you hold it and you say, no, I can't, it's a recipe I can't share, or I can't tell you my idea, then it's never going to go out and be able to get feedback on that. So those are the two things that I took away and so here we're very open, because we want to get that feedback to ensure that we make the tweaks necessary for it to be successful from a customer service perspective.
Absolutely, and of course I know one of your visions here is not just food and beverage, it's kind of bigger than that. This is a place for ideas and people with ideas to come and talk and hopefully grow and develop those ideas. Entrepreneurs, problem solvers, and stuff like that. And that leads us to this great guest that we have today for kind of our second episode, Ryan Mummert here. Ryan is a great thinker. He's really innovative in the data space, and we're just really happy to have Ryan here on the Innovate Guam Podcast Entrepreneurship series. So, Ryan, thank you for being a guest.
Appreciate you. Glad to be here.
Right.
And Charlie, I spent some thinking time on the corner table off the bar there.
Yes.
Yes. one of my favorites to meet in the afternoon. Have a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
so
no, absolutely. And you mentioned data, and that's synonymous with Ryan. And I think that when you start talking to him, he kind of gets you at hello because when it comes to data. So it's really powerful, the discussions that we've had.
Yes, absolutely. All right, our guest for today is Ryan Mummert, president of Pinpoint Guam and host of the Data Points podcast. Ryan and his team at Pinpoint are working to bring more transparency, accuracy, and usability to Guam's property and real estate information. Through tools like REALFacts, Pinpoint is helping real estate professionals, investors, developers, leaders, policymakers, and everyday residents make better decisions using better data. Ryan has become one of Guam's most important voices in the conversation around housing, permitting, business culture, government of Guam efficiency, and the need for Guam to stop making major decisions on incomplete information, disconnected systems, and outdated processes. And through the Data Points podcast, Ryan has been sitting down with business leaders, real estate professionals, developers, educators, and entrepreneurs to explore what is really happening in Guam's economy. Ryan, welcome back to the Innovate Guam podcast. All right, Ryan, let's start at the beginning. Your company, Pinpoint, your podcast, Data Points, and the technology behind Pinpoint, REALFacts, they didn't just come out of nowhere, right? They started from some kind of need and some kind of beginning. What was that need that you saw that kind of gave birth to kind of those three things? REALFacts, that piece of technology, Pinpoint, the company built around it, and then what you do over on the Data Points side.
Sure. So I started practicing real estate in Menlo Park in 2000. And I worked for a company called Sage Financial Services. This guy, Bob Brown, and then I mentored under this guy, Ted Rossi, Ted editor out there. When I was there, title companies would show up and they'd say, hey, you want a farm? And a farm is focus area research marketing. They give you a list of addresses, you send postcards, or you knock on doors, that kind of thing. Right? So I came here, and first thing I did, I went to a title company. Hey, what's a farm? Oh, they're in Iran. Right.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And then so I asked them to aggregate records for me, and they did. They made an effort to do it, but it was such a heavy lift. So then they started quietly taking longer and longer to send me the things that I asked for, and then eventually it was like, hey, you're on your own, right? So in 2011, I happened to be at the Department of Land Management when Will Castro, former Senator Will Castro, called me into a room and said, hey, can you just sit down and be in this demo? It's for real estate records. So I did, and that's when Land Management turned on their EGIS. And so when I had access to that data, I was like, oh, I'm back in Menlo Park. So I started doing all the things that I used to do in Menlo Park to originate business, And really, it's law of averages, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I love about, math. It's the universal law, and if you do something 10 times a certain way, and you are able to repeat that result, 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10 times, right? Rinse, repeat, and that is a model for success, right? And if you can't do anything, if you can do that one thing, that's the franchise model in a lot of ways, right? It's packaged, it's set aside, and it's like, hey, if you do this, there's a 60%, 70% chance that you're going to hit your marks, you're going to do what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no infrastructure like that for real estate here, and it's really gate kept. There's, what happens is there's these structures that allow people to monetize, and those structures become protectionist. And when someone comes in to want to break down that structure, everyone comes in and is like, we're fine, right? And if you talk to someone who's entrenched in that structure and you have a good idea, they say, well, that's a great idea, but it's not really right for us now. We're fine. I'm doing the business the way I want to do business, but that's how disruption happens. Everybody, everyone's good, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to do it my way, and doing it my way. It's one of my favorite things is On the Edge is this guy, Nate Silver, and he says, even when game theory says to go one direction, every once in a while you have to pivot randomly. I got the royal flush. I got to fold every once in a while, right? Maybe even the clock ticks one way or the other, but when I fold, that's when the unexpected happens. And we're talking about that now, the unexpected, right? Because the notion is we don't have an imagination significant enough to imagine all the things that are happening now, right? But if you don't plan for the unexpected, you're gonna get caught. And that's what happens to these big companies. They can't see the writing on the wall until it's on top of them, and they get disrupted.
And I that's one of the things that I teach in class, because I teach entrepreneurship at the University of Guam, and we talk about these companies. So we talk about BlackBerry, we talk about Blockbuster, right? They did not want to pivot. And there's a couple of other ones that are pretty hard-headed right now. One that we were studying is Macy's. Mm-hmm. And so even though Macy's is still, they feel like the brick and mortar, even though their age group of people going to actually touch and feel is between 65 and 8. It's an older crowd, and the data really is telling them something different. Mm-hmm. But they're not following the trend, and I think that's it's very important that you noted that. Very important.
But it's entrenchment, right? It's entrenchment. I'm entrenched. This is the area, the turf I'm defending. I don't have time to look at my flank and my left and right. But I'm good here. But this is where you get beat all the time, and you can't discount the existing players because the pivot happens quick. And when they decide to pivot, there is real resources and material and momentum and mission. So like Disney is a good case study, right? Everyone's like an ESPN, right? All Netflix is coming in and swinging around, gobbling up all the things, right? Apple's not doing so well. But once they get it right, once they embrace the culture, they embrace the vision, those machines start to move. But if they don't, they become Blockbuster.
Right.
And it sounds like, you saw a need, but it was kind of like going backwards in time. You had these capabilities and access to this kind of data when you were back in the States. You didn't have it when you came here, and then later on, this looks a little bit like what I was dealing with, so on. So the question is, did you start out to make a technology company here in Guam, or were you just really chasing a need?
No, I was chasing a need, right? Because Guam has this local preference thing, right?
Yeah.
Which I respect. But what happens a lot of times, local preference, effectively bastardizes a really good product and runs it through a front system, and then there's no support, there's no maintenance, no one gets trained, the system doesn't get fully leveraged, everybody works workarounds, and then so you get this junk system that maybe you can use 30% of. You get a message that says, we'll have you the document in 3 days. That message has been on the land management system since 2011.
Right.
Yeah, good luck.
And so you're trying to fulfill a need, or you're trying to fill a gap. But you also spoke about the roadblocks that have been put in front of being able to get this type of information out there. Why do you think that is? Why do you think, is it because, folks kind of want to hold that information close to them? They gathered that information, they're gathering that data, it's our data, we don't want to share.
No, it's an elephant. An elephant sitting on top of us, right? And no one knows how to eat the elephant. That's effectively what it is, right? It's the problem is so big, and everyone's so entrenched in their silos, they can only see the problem in front of them, and no one's looking globally at the big picture and kind of pulling it out and saying, no, we got to get this right? First step, let's stop onboarding paper applications. Let's just stop the bleeding, right? Just basic, let's stop the bleeding, right? There's so much low hanging fruit, but that's mission. And there's just lack of mission. So my frustration, back to your question, I started the business because I didn't want to work with the government, because I had no faith in the government to ever deploy a system that would be effective for me. And I just kept asking myself, because I went to the guy who built the government system, and okay, it didn't work when I tried to build it as well, in that way. But then once you understand, you have to start with the data.
Yes.
Data integrity is key, and there is zero data integrity here. I'll tell you what, right? Because there's no mindfulness perspective to the data. Because no one understands the power of the data, right? Because if you understood this law of averages, which is like freaking religion, right? In a lot of ways. For me, if you want proof of God, it's math, right? Because if math, nothing is so perfect, right?
You sound like my mother, who was a mathematician.
Right. Well, I've been in a room of nerds for maybe 2 years, and
no, that's good. And that's exactly when we had a discussion, maybe almost a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, on the drone industry side, the drone, what it pretty much does is collect data.
Yes.
But it's the system and the software that really is where the magic happens. And so being able to complement those, or leveraging those technologies on being able to put them together is something that needs to happen. And another part that we've spoken about is that lag of understanding that the data that the drones collect today could be as or equal to or better than the data from the old way of doing it, with, guys going out there in the field and posting and shooting.
Yeah.
It's quicker, but again, it's just a little bit of a lag. But I see that the technology is trying to catch up. But again, I still feel that there's roadblocks where, for example, we still need that data to get signed off by a surveyor, right? Because that's the law. But at some point, we have to change that law.
No, but no one's desirous to change their model. That's why you see these big companies expanding verticals. You can't expanding horizontally because you can't find the service provider to meet that need. So it's like, shoot, I'm just going to do it myself, right?
Right.
So I want to be 3D printing, right? Well, or additive. Okay, I could bring the machine, but who's going to design it for me? Because there's a framework for design, right?
Yes.
Okay, I have to, but so I can't. So shoot, I got to find someone to design. So I got to encapsulate, right? That's like all these 3D printing companies, right? There's some who just make the machines and they make the best machines. There's some who have to do the whole development cycle, like Black Buffalo. There's some it's just like it's all these different segments, and it's just like, but you have to do that to get adoption of the technology, and you have to work with the early adopters. And that's really where we started. We found the early adopters in the Guam Association of Realtors to say, hey, we need this data too. We value this data.
Right.
And so with that, we were able to say, come together and not worry about money, worry about a baseline. Let's just get to a baseline and see what we can see. Hey, let's work together to get to this plateau. And then it's a foothold. And once you have a foothold, you raise the data fluency and it lifts everybody up. Because even from an evolutionary perspective, from the time I started you should hear the evolution of the conversations in my office from like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, to like, we're speaking Japanese, man. It's like we're like full on like conversational, doing written reports,
right,
deep in the real estate context. And it happens quick, and it can happen for us quick.
Yeah.
But for us, that's what we need to be doing right now. Third leg's going away. We need to be ideating in these spaces and having ideas and talking about, and then, like you say, share your idea. Everyone's so protectionist, man. How many guys were selling books out of a garage, right? It's just Bezos was the execution guy. He's the guy who figured it out, right? He did all the deals. He was willing to work on the door in his basement.
Right.
He was willing to hang on that extra day, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's the journey. That's what you got to do.
And I appreciate that, because when we did meet, Ryan was able, he showed us, you opened up what you were working on, and you didn't have to. But I think that being able to get other input and there's a lot of ideas that come about from trying to show a system that you're working on. Maybe there's something that comes out of that. And I think, I really appreciate you being able to open
Bill
with that.
Bill Gates needed Steve Jobs, right? In a lot of ways, they drove each other, they pushed each other, they collaborated, they pushed the market, right?
Yeah, and like what you were talking about kind of from the drone industry, taking it back to kind of the military, what the specifically special operations found later, United States Air Force, the drone is just a truck with a sensor, right? you've got to have a back-end system to take that data, analyze it, process it, exploit it, distribute it, all of that kind of stuff. So who's going to do that? It's easy just to kind of put the truck up there with the sensor and gather all that, but then what are you going to do with all that data? How are you going to exploit it? And that's really where the gold is, right? So getting to your point, you know, we've talked many times on this podcast about, you know, data is the new 21st century oil, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
You know, we talk about like roads and bridges and utilities and stuff like that being traditional infrastructure. Obviously, in the 21st century, not only is data infrastructure, but it's fuel as well. So getting people to understand that and know that, and that's the way that you can have stair-step change in process, in model, in execution. And that's why it's so important, particularly in an environment like this with Guam, where, you know, we're a small island, but if we can take on some of this and understand the power that this has, we could stair step over maybe other places that are still just kind of playing with it, if we decide we're going to embrace that.
And just look at Triple J, right? They're putting these charging stations everywhere.
Yes.
Right? But Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk was putting these charging stations throughout the country, but now he has all these energy centers for his data centers that are already entrenched, and he doesn't have to permit or anything like that. But it's that forward foundational thinking that you have to have the vision. You have to see this thing. You know, I'm going to do this pilot initiative to place these things here with the broader mindset. Hey, if this works out, I'm going to put it next to where I'm going to put the nodes to expand out the next 6. I'm going to think about it with the broader vision in mind. But
the vision, that's the key.
Vision.
It's beginning with the end in mind and then walking that dog backwards to say, this is what I need to do to get from where I am right now to out there.
But it's the will and the fortitude to bet on that, right? Like
yes.
TSMC, good one too, right? They started forging chips in the same way as everybody else. But if you remember, like back in the day when you bought a computer, the first generation is really expensive, right? And then it starts going over time, Moore's law, right? They get better over time, it gets cheaper. These guys are like, you know what, we're just going to charge the end price now. But we're going to get so many orders, and we're going to produce, and we're confident in that. We're confident in Moore's law. By the end of this iteration, we're going to hit our money. So we're not going to front load it. We're just going to even it out. Get the orders, and we'll get even better because we'll make so much more because everyone's going to buy from us, right? Mm-hmm. Now they're 3 or 4 iterations so far ahead of the market, and they're so entrenched they can actually raise their price because they're moated, right?
And that's a part. And you know, when we talk about the vision, right? I mean, and that's what we're discussing right now. It's having a vision, and that is the one thing that, you know, I live in and die every single day about Guam, because I feel that here we can accomplish so much because, you know, we have a great test bed to do so much. I mean, if we wanted to have driverless vehicles, right? I mean, we could test them out here. We have
so many things,
because we have a sort of a plaza.
Solar panels in American Samoa. It's like we just got to raise our hands, right? No one's raising their hands.
Correct. Yes. But we have to be aggressive. But it's the mindset and the culture and the will to say that we can, because we actually can. That's the part. So I think that the vision has to. You know, we're losing our third leg, and so I feel that right now is really the prime to be able to set the things in motion, put the things on the table as far as creating this vision for us to be able to move forward and be a test bed for, you know, with AI. That's one of the things that we also say, that AI now has leveled the playing field across the world. If we wanted to create apps here that would change things around the world, we can do that now.
Yes.
And so I think that is the aggressiveness that we need to take, the take and the will to say that we can. Because there's no reason why we can't.
So that's a great segue. So let's talk about that. What does the Guam data strategy look like? You know, and you know, we're talking about why it's so important, but let's put some meat on that. What does a Guam data strategy look like, and what could it possibly lead to?
Well, I think the first thing the government has to do is start caring about their data and start unsiloing it, right? I really think UOG should have all the data.
Yes.
Because it's aligned with all leadership, it aligns with all the grants,
Yes.
it allows for study.
And it's under the government.
And it's continuity, and then they can monetize it too and pilot a lot of things. And workforce training, development, that's where it should live. And then you have Research Corporation of Guam, you have like the Center for Island Sustainability, you have Global Learning and Engagement. They can take those data sets and take it out to the larger market and train.
Yes.
Right? There should be engagement with chamber, and let's find the early adopters who want to come in and like model their data, right? And we support that structure. We do engagement and training to get people looking at their data and get them curious and asking questions. We look at data sets and we see what can we see forward looking and what can we see now, and work with the public policy, because there's great ideas coming out of the public policy group. They just need to be shared. And imagine if they weren't just taking stuff off the internet. Imagine if they had real data and insights and access to industry insiders to give back, because the industry needs these guys. The people that you're training in your public policy, as soon as they come out, I'm gonna freaking hire them. Because they know how to decision data, they know how to value data, they know how to be curious about data.
Yes.
But I can't run my business without that curiosity, without that structure. So if that doesn't sit at UOG, we're dead.
How do we make it so that it's true execution and not just another study? What I see a lot here in Guam is we get buried in studies, right? We have task force and
let me look into
studies and all of the stuff like that, and there's never any execution and follow.
But because there is no expertise here, and there's a lack of imagination to a degree, right? Because the people who can figure it out do. But then you need to lift, right? So the Sino Guahan, great program, right? Funded me, Gita Partners. Yeah, good, right? But I'm an extremely technical business. There's very few people who can sit with me as an SME, as a subject matter expert, and understand what I'm talking about. And I don't even know anything about tech. But I got money for a tech business. How do you underwrite that? Okay, they do. But once it's done, when you go on Shark Tank, when you get investment, you're sitting with Mark Cuban and he's helping you. You're sitting with Damon, Mr. Wonderful, those guys. There's expertise, there's network, there's infrastructure, there's collaboration. None of that here. You just get the money. Good luck. Right?
Yeah.
So if you don't find those structures, so me, you need to come together to build those structures and support, and that starts with sharing ideas. Right? That's what it is. We just talk. We got to talk about the problems and just be a community.
Right, and that's a little bit of what you were saying earlier, Rob, about what we're doing here at B&B. Is one of the things that we're trying to create is an environment where we create a hub here in the restaurant, a incubator. Because many times when we want to get together and talk, we're having coffee at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And so why not just do it here?
Coffee talk.
Yeah. It came out a little bit, yeah. And so I wanna push forward. I wanna push forward the idea of getting like-minded individuals as SMEs to sit in these meetings with folks that are coming in. You have an idea, pitch it. Let us work with you. Just within an hour or so, let us have coffee and talk through the idea or something that you're planning on doing, a business and whatever that may be. And so I really want to move forward with creating this incubator here at the restaurant, because I think it would be really not too much pressure. You're not in a school environment. You're very open. You're very open dialogue and discussions.
If you want to be an entrepreneur, you can't go into a room and sit with people you never met. You're not built for that, right? And challenge yourself to be built for that, right? Because it's a learned skill.
Yeah.
You make yourself uncomfortable here, but when you're uncomfortable with other people, you grow.
Right.
And that's an environment you'll grow in because these people will push you.
Oh no. And just from a personal perspective, when my first idea launch was back in 2012. And it was a company called Chipsus. And I learned that fast, that I had to work the room, and I had 30 seconds. And I just found my old computer, and in my old computer, I had these videos that I kept on running on the pitch over and over and over and over again, because you had those 10 seconds, you had that 20 seconds. So I was meeting within Silicon Valley. I was going to all these tech startup conferences that they would have. And so you have to work at it, and you have to sort of find your strength in being able to share your ideas with others and try to capture them in 30 seconds.
But it's confidence, right? It's the belief that you belong in the room, right? And sometimes you got to be in the room and see the room to believe you belong in it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But really there's no one who can't be in the same room as anybody else. It's just a function of confidence and self-belief. And that's mindset, right? Believe you belong in the room because, really there's no difference. If you when you get to like the top level and you start meeting up with like the top people, you're like, he doesn't know either. They're just doing their best, right? And it's reps and they make mistakes and everybody's imperfect.
Yeah. So let's talk about some specific use cases and models. So you, Ryan, you're a very much, I would say, an expert on different process reform ideas in terms of government service delivery. Can you talk about how we can apply like some of this data and technology strategies to different government of Guam processes in order to improve the service delivery process so that we get better outcomes here on island?
Well, one of the missteps that I make is I always bought the software. I bought the software first, right? And so when you buy software to solve a problem, is like effectively what happens is you create this RFP and you make this list of problems, right? And someone comes and says, I can solve all your problems, just sign right here, right? But inevitably that's not true. And there's a lack of an adult in the room in terms of advising what you really need. So then you get these massive $30 million systems that we don't really need, right? But they're being, at some level of capacity, maybe you do need it, but we're not sophisticated enough to do this. But this is a sham. This is something that's being put upon because there's a lack of fundamental expertise, technical expertise. And then also once you get entrenched with these systems, all the data is locked behind the wall. And you can have access to this data, but it's a data dump, meaning you have to parse it yourself, which nobody wants to do, right? So to parse it, there's a value add. I don't know if this is for the sham, but I just understand how the model would work, right? But getting the data parsed and organized in a way, generally that's a cost plus.
Yes.
Right? Which is, okay, that's fine. But if the government just focused on managing its own data, I think it would be apparent the applications that's needed, the level, and then you could do a lot more things internally, structurally, because you have more need.
So I'll play devil's advocate to you. So I'll go one step further, not only managing your data and ownership and, like you said, responsible management of that data, but also understanding your process, right? From the community I come from, it's called standard work, right? So you have standard work. So you know your process from soup to nuts, from beginning to end. You do this, and this. However long it takes, however efficient or inefficient it is, this is the process, and everybody is complying with that process. There's a lot of departments and organizations, I would say, they don't have that even, or they have that, but nobody's following it.
So can I tell you what we did for the Guam Association of Realtors? We took we took our title underwriting guidelines, right? And then we took SOPs and we put them in there and we put it under a product and we said, hey, if you have any title questions or anything like that, you can put it in and this would be like a benchmark. We get answers, but they're guided. We monitor in the back end. We did the same thing for permitting. We put the Guam Development Handbook, all the flow charts. We spent time. We went with every agency. We worked with all the consultants, and we modeled all their steps and processes to getting permitted, soup to nuts, right? We put it in the LLM. We put groundwork around it. So now if you want a permit, you can go on our LLM and you type in what to do, and it'll give you exactly the steps, link you to the forms, and put all that together. But the beauty of that is we make it available to the people behind the counter too. So everybody has the same steps in the methodology in front of them. Because the problem is a lot of the people in the back don't know the steps 100% either. They don't know the interventions. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know the answers to the question because it's just lack of training or the legacy knowledge has left the building.
How many public auditor reports do we see and over again? Lack of SOPs, lack of compliance with the government rules and stuff.
Right, so we just had that. if we had like a central database for every agency, for every iteration that mapped out policy, that not just the public could go to and understand the process.
Yes.
The people behind the counter could go and
Yes.
understand that process. I mean, we could do that on ChatGPT today. And that's where I did it. It's free.
And I think that one of the things that we have, if we talk about the government, I think that we need to make sure that we're very open to discuss the fact that in some cases, the government doesn't want to use this technology because it could potentially take away, in their minds, jobs and positions, right? And
But
so,
it will create other opportunities.
and that's the part that they're failing to see.
No.
The creation of other opportunities of not re-engineering, but
Creative destruction.
with the folks that they may have to move, they could train them to do
Yes.
other tasks. But I just learned of something this week. I'm very big on DRT. I'm like dissecting. I just had to renew my license again. I've been huge advocate about why we still have to pay this credit card fee when we're going online. They're finally sending checks out. That could be an easy fix. It can be an easy fix. So what I learned was that the government doesn't want to. They've had situations where they can easily look at whether it's a business or individual, but they don't want it. They don't want to do it. They would rather take the longer writing a check, a reimbursement,
Why?
Because
I don't understand why would there be an
Because-
incentive for the government to not want.
one of the things that they need to do is lay out the rules, right? So the process has to be determined, and they haven't done it.
Right.
But it's really
But
basic.
they're supposed to.
But they're supposed to, right? And so those are the little things that, you know, as minimal as it is, it really creates this chaos,
Yes.
right? And
Enough for the little things, the
Yes.
loose ends don't get tied, and then everything's falling apart.
falls apart at some point. And so I think that, you know, if we were to look at the government again, if we're talking about the government, we really had to take, you know, almost 3 steps back, because the fundamentals and the foundations of how these agencies work are not there.
Right. So because that was the point that you're making. If you just bought software off the shelf at this point, it would be like garbage in, garbage
Exactly.
out.
Yes.
You would need to really do the basic. Where are the SOPs? Are we all following this? Has everybody been trained? All that, and then get to that level, and now you inject the technology to say, okay, we're going to now use technology to help streamline these aspects of the process that everybody knows and everybody is following.
But I would argue the current infrastructure doesn't want to change because it's to the benefit of the current structure, right? And that's why,
I don't see the benefit though.
Well, the benefit is I'm entrenched, right? I'm the only one who can pull us out of this mess because it's garbage in and garbage out, and I'm the only one who has the Rosetta Stone for all the garbage from like 1970 to year to date, right? So that even the experiential hire, you need that, because who's going to go back to the AS400 data back in the day and sort it out, because it's a subset, right? Because it's context. If you have contextual knowledge of the legacy data issues, then you
Yes.
can back it back out. But then, you know, someone has to go in and pull that context for buck. So that's the trap. That's the trap. And so you have to rip that Band-Aid off and say, you know, okay, whatever.
Yeah, you got to kind of break it.
Yeah.
You got to kind of break things and not be afraid to break things, because in breaking it, you're going to make it better. It's kind of like, I think the analogy that you used one time about setting
Breaking the bone. Yeah.
breaking a bone. Yeah.
Reset it. You
Yeah.
have to reset it.
It's
gonna
last
hurt.
podcast.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt. But I agree with you. We have to rip that Band-Aid off, because again, I think that with new hires, they kind of just fall into that. You know, they fall in line and they do exactly what they've been told
We
to
call
do.
it Bubba training.
And
Yes.
it's,
Yeah, I got here. Bubba's been here for 20 years. Bubba says this is the way we do it. Well, why? I don't know. This is the way we do
Yeah.
it.
That's what we
Yeah.
do. And then also there's also an inherent tendency to look out externally for solutions rather than internally. It's like, so that's why I operate outside of procurement, because I get frustrated. I'm waiting for the government to do something I can do myself, but just
Yeah.
find someone else to like kind of pony up with me, right?
yeah, and so
And I'll do it better.
but something positive, right? That I would is that there's so much legacy, right? It's not like it's W1, like, you know, the world is a W3, but like the fact is that we could change it. There is a way to change it, and that's the positive side. But it's going to take a lot of collaboration, because the agencies are going to have to come together, which right
Which
now
is a good thing.
it would be a great thing. But I think that there is a way to do it. There's been a lot of roadmaps, a lot of studies that have been done, Rob.
And they're probably saying all of the same
They're
thing.
saying all the same thing. When you pick up the findings or the 120-page outbrief, they all say the same thing. And so it has to take somebody with initiative to be able to tackle this problem and address it the way it needs to be addressed. Because
Yes.
if not, it's just going to continue to go in cycles over and over again.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what we've been doing, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And so Ed Untalon at Chamber keeps saying the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over.
Over and over, and
It's
we
like,
do it,
what
and
are we doing?
because we know what all the problems are. And I'm big on data as well. I built a customs software because I'm working on a project, but I have a lot of data that I need to process through a system, which customs does not have. So I built it for them, and so I presented it to them, and they said, it's not a government issued software. There's no way we can use it, even though it does everything that we would like for it to do.
Qualtrics.
And so, but again, I think that, can we do it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's going to take the will of everybody saying, let's do it.
Yeah.
It's time.
And that's why it's the stakeholders who have to speak up and get together and say, this is what we want.
Yes.
And demand it. And I just don't understand why that doesn't, maybe it happens, but I guess, I don't know, it's disappointing that we haven't come to this place where like solutions have been preferred, but I think we're getting to that place. And I
Yes.
think we're getting to that place where the frustration is there, people want change. And,
Yeah, I'm optimistic too. It feels like we're bubbling into a new period now, and we're on the precipice of something new. That's what I feel like.
my internal level of aggro is like, it might spill on you a little.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I feel, because it's not rocket science.
No.
It's not rocket science, the idea that we can totally transform Guam and make Guam this jewel of the Pacific, this, totally new 21st century tech and innovation hub. It's just a requirement of leadership, commitment, follow through, and just getting serious about this, over ideology, over politics, over I'm scared or entrenched or whatever. You say, okay, here's where we are right now. That's where we want to be. And then you make everybody responsible, administration after administration, whether it's Democrat or Republican. Your job is to get us further down the road to that vision, and we're going to hold you accountable for that. Did we get further down the field and closer to that vision? Well, that's the way you're going to be graded.
And it's not complicated, it's fundamentals.
Yes. It's all fundamentals, foundations. I mean, the fact, like, for example, but we have to be able to embrace technology. We can't, we got to be able to embrace AI in a way that it can work for us. We can't just kind of be afraid of it. And for example, I'll use a drone example again. I think we showed you, right? I mean, we could actually do a mapping of the island and pinpoint every single pothole with AI technology. We can pinpoint every single pothole on the island, the depth, the width, and we can put it into software where we can analyze how much fill do we need for each one of those potholes to be fixed. We can map that out, put it in a spreadsheet, go down the line. Okay, so in order to fix every single pothole based on the number that we have on the data sets, it's going to be 50 million. Well, we don't have 50 million, but let's start cracking at it. At least we have the data now. Like, we don't have somebody driving around with the window down, two guys hanging out and saying, or one in the back, saying, okay, here's one, get out, spray paint it, put a yellow,
Right.
map it. It's, those days, we got to move beyond that. And so another example where technology could be embraced, and I think that is where also we have to get to, where everybody feels comfortable with the technology that's coming in place.
Yeah, and I think what we're talking about here, as I listen to everybody talk, we're talking about real estate and we're talking about government service delivery processes. But what I'm hearing is something bigger than this. This is really, if we get serious about this, this is really economic development and economic intelligence to drive economic development, as well as economic intelligence to drive improved quality of life. So it's something bigger than just an individual process or real estate or permitting or whatever. It's really getting to these outcomes of economic development for Guam and better quality of life for the people living on Guam.
But it's about trust, Rob. And people have lost trust and faith in the government and their ability to execute, even the messaging that's coming in terms of, can I build a house here? Yes. Are you sure? Because is EPA going to approve me? Is my septic tank the right size? Is it parental? Is it not? Even though the answer is yes, there's so many derivative questions, they're unanswered. There's no real yes or no. And so that's the problem I was trying to solve with REALFacts. Be the source of truth. Be the trusted place where you can go and get expertise. So that's where we're aligned. All our records are fully abstracted. So when you click on it, there's a chain of title. We have we can see who the property tax owner is. All the records are available. And I'm not stealing it from the government. I bought it from the government. I buy the documents every day. I index them. I put them up in my system.
What do you mean when you buy it?
The government has a fee structure for buying records, so I buy them every day.
Yeah, you can.
So I'm paying the government a lot of money every month to buy all their documents. So it's funny because I was accused of is like I asked for a set of publicly available data and it was denied to me, and I said why? And it's like, well, you're going to monetize my work. And I was like, bro, it's the people's work, right? And I'm not going to monetize. I'm going to make it available because you're not. Because how am I supposed to plan if I don't know what this basic information about property is? And you have it there in a spreadsheet, but you won't show it to me because you're so scared I'm going to benefit from it personally, which really sucks, right? Because I'm just going to make it to the place where everybody's going to benefit, but I want to say I get it because a lot of people have done exactly that, right? Even with the valuation, like. Sometimes these layers that are developed in ancillary projects end up making their way to the private market and getting sold for a profit outside of the public's knowledge, right? But hey, it's a derivative product. I don't know what I'm just saying it's like this data is valuable and people see it and people want it, right? And the government should start really caring about it and treating it like it's a valued resource. Because other people are treating it like it's a valued resource because they know and they're robbing the government blind, right? In terms of, I'm asking you for money for a problem that you don't even know that you really have. You just think you have it. And that's the story we tell ourselves, right? We think we're sick, but we're not really sick, right? It's like we think we need all these medications. No, you just need to live better, man. You can go to sleep a little, eat a little better, right? And you're gonna be just fine, right? Fundamentals, but no, take this pill, take that pill, right? And you need to see discussions or the CPAP.
Yeah. Do we think that Guam is in danger of or vulnerable to maybe outside forces coming in and doing just what you talked about, monetizing this because they have access to more capital, more technology or whatever, and come in and impose some kind of outside solution and then profit all off of it such that the local folks don't really see the benefit?
Well, they are, but it's just passing through local benefits, local preference, right? But nobody cares about Guam. I mean, it's 150,000 people. I have a startup, but it's not really a startup because it's not going to scale. Right? Yeah. I mean, I'm not diminishing myself, but we don't have the market to scale. I might come up with a product locally that might create a nice lifestyle for myself, might get bought out or transition, but there's a limit to this market. So CoreLogic or Cox or those guys who come in like do big property data, they'll buy it from me at some point or anyone who has it, but for pennies on the dollar, and it's really expensive to aggregate and collect this data.
And for the island, right? I mean, just think about what they would be purchasing, right? It's the island, this 170,000 people home, right?
Like 8 billion, right?
Right, and so that's one thing that I think a lot of folks may not understand is the market size. Because the throughput, for example, in a restaurant, I mean, we're battling for 30,000 people that are actually paying customers around the island to come to the restaurant every single day, right? And so, the market is completely different. One of the things that you touched on, Ryan, was the accessibility to the data, and I think that one of the things that I've seen is that companies that have been able to thrive have been open to sharing that data because
Right?
yeah, yeah. For example, when we were doing the ShipSu's rollout, we had dialogues with FedEx, UPS, because we needed their data, we needed their rates, and they were like, "Have at it. What do you need? You want my APIs? I'll give you everything you need for you to hook up to my system." Why? Because now we would become a gateway for them.
Yeah.
We would become an marketing for them. You go on our website, on our tools and our app, and you would see UPS, and you would click on UPS. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Yes.
And so why wouldn't the government want your system to work? Because it probably could potentially make their lives a lot easier.
No, what we propose to do for a chamber, right, is there's, in the GRTs, there's 13 sectors, right? We'll create a pro forma for those 13 sectors based on data structures that are, basically what people file their taxes, right? But how beneficial would be for you as a restaurateur, right? To look at, okay, service or restaurant, whatever, right? And see a pro forma and say, okay, what's his cost of goods? What's the average cost of goods and what am I paying? Because at least you have a benchmark. Am I paying too much, too little? Yeah. How is the average operation doing on Guam, and how am I lining up on that? Just having that baseline of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
If the banks all talk like that, and data, like they're talking like that, the insurance companies talk like that to a degree. But if everybody started talking like that, right? Just collaboratively, right? And that's the problem. And the government agencies want to talk like that, but their data structures are not managed properly, and it's just such a big lift to get out the parse. So I don't even know if you can go back and fix that, but you can stop compounding the problem.
Right. Agree.
Yeah.
And that's vision.
Yeah. So let's circle this all back around and put it into the boxes of the good, the bad, and the ugly. We had a really great conversation about kind of what the possibilities are, where we need to go. So what would you drop into the good box?
The good is community. We have a strong community of entrepreneurs who are going to get it done. And then the bad?
The bad.
Okay. The bad is, I think, there is entrenchment, especially with existing systems and structures, that it's going to be difficult to come to a solution quickly.
And the ugly.
And the ugly is, it's procurement. Right? But if you want a meaningful solution, you're going to have to get money behind it, right? And you can't get real money behind it unless you solve procurement. But I mean, it's like the likelihood is
you're talking too broad. Let's unpack what you mean when you say solving procurement.
Let's talk about permitting, right? Everybody needs a new permitting system here. There was a bid out 2 years ago. It came out. It had to go through local preference, and there was a litigation, or there was a dispute. 2 years later, they had to kick it out, and they're going to open up for rebid, and we're still no closer. And then who's to say that cycle is not going to repeat? So it just rinse, repeat, procurement. No permitting system still. So when is that going to be okay?
We can't get closer to solution.
How can we ever get anything? We can't get anything bought. And what ends up happening is, out of frustration, you end up extending the existing vendor contracts and compounding the problem, or going to sole source and going with someone who doesn't have real expertise.
Right.
And so it just, we're on a hamster wheel, and that's the ugly, right? I think, and it's just, there's potential where we're going to keep running, and it's going to keep spinning if you make the wrong choice.
Yeah. Charlie, any parting words of wisdom you'd like to throw into that?
No, I think that Ryan's definitely in the right path, and I think that he's doing it the way I think, unfortunately, we're going to have to do it, and that's on our own, right? And so we're going to have to find the means to be able to get the data, create the systems, and then show the product so that people can understand exactly what we're trying to create. On the restaurant side, one of the things that I built the POS system, and the reason why I built it was because I'm collecting data from the customer base, and not only what they're buying or their number one beer, but I'm also overlapping with other things that are pretty interesting. So, for example, I'm overlapping weather patterns, so on an 80, 90 degree, degrees days, what was the drinking habit for different customers? Why didn't the pizza sell at 80 degrees? Or is it something to do with heat? So I'm overlapping a lot of data sets to find a little bit of a anomalies,
Patterns,
right?
Patterns in the noise,
right? And exactly, and so it's been very, very interesting having this data, and it's not only for managing the business, but truly understanding the business, because I think that once you understand those patterns, it allows you to be able to say pivot, or just no. I mean, you start learning. You're like 80-degree weather. You start in my mind. I'm already got to get those drinks ready. I mean, again, obviously it's when it's hot, everybody wants to drink. But I mean, I'm really. It's easier just to say that everybody drinks, but now I have data to show and say, well,
what drinks?
At 81 degrees, it starts dropping. 82, starts going up. So, but at least I have that data to back it up. So, I would say that, Ryan, you got to continue to do what you're doing. I think that what you're doing, the system that you're putting together is just phenomenal, and I think it's needed for us. And it also ties in with other potential visionary businesses and systems, infrastructure-wise, like for example, driverless vehicles. For us to be able to map the island is step one for us to be able, because on Google Map, you can't use Google Earth to ensure we'll have vehicles driving off the right onto the beach area. So, but again, these are all the fundamentals. These are all the building blocks of how we should be looking at the vision that we should have for
and why we're doing what we're doing as an island community, because we're trying to fast track and leverage this technology. Ryan, we've had a lot of conversations offline about maybe some ideas about how to get there, like a consortium model, an alliance model, and those kind of things. Do you got any thoughts about how you would recommend, employing something like that to move these kind of concepts forward?
Well, I think these conversations need to happen specifically within the trades and within these industries that we want to cultivate, right? And we need to get a gathering of subject matter experts and start memorializing the context that they have, because it's leaving the building to it. So I think transitionally what you have here is you have the boomers leaving the market, they're exiting their businesses, and there's so much low-hanging fruit there. Paper-based, and you can convert the digital journey. So if you're like 20 years old, we need a school where we teach you that journey to take a paper-heavy business and convert it into a digital business, to take that data journey, and the advisory piece to help businesses from year 2 to year 10. Because year 1 to year 2 we're covered, right? But it's the repeatability, it's the consistency of effort, it's the structures that you build for success that scales you. So there's like a school right now that I saw where it's like it costs $150K a year, but at the end of 4 years, if you don't get funded for $1 million business, they'll give you your money back, right? So why can't we do something like that, right?
Absolutely.
Why couldn't we couldn't select the best of the best, and we can say, hey, we're going to champion business in these 5 sectors, right? And we're gonna seed 5 of you. We're going to put you through this rigorous boot camp, and we're going to get the best people in the world to come and talk to you, right? We're going to take you to the Harvard satellite or whatever, because we can do that locally. There's no reason why we can't, and we can breed that industry here.
So let's talk about this. This term keeps coming up over and over again. Business-friendly environment, right? So what does a Guam business-friendly environment look like? And
pay my power bill, have reliable power, right? Take my cost infrastructure away so I can live. I mean, like if I'm paying like through the nose for commercial power, but I'm in an industry, that's the only thing. But my property taxes are nothing, okay, right? But really, my utilities are the main thing that kill me, right? And I have to push my prices up. Make power cheap for me. Right? Put structures in place and incentivize me, or give me tax incentives to take some of that edge off, to get customers in the door, so I can get on my feet, and then I can take advantage of those margins, so I don't lose my shirt in the first 2 years.
What about attracting outside investment and outside capital here to Guam so that we can scale up on maybe some big projects?
Well, I mean, let's talk about like development. We have the capital here, but we don't have so talk about the Community Reinvestment Act, right? We're giving all these government incentives to develop affordable housing. The banks can put up money at 0% interest for developers doing affordable housing, have them participate in that pool, and every dollar under the par that they spend gets credited to their CRA, right? Why couldn't we collaborate on that? You know, it's like, and that's this is where all the margin comes in. It's the carry, right, for the developer. If it takes me 18 months from the time I buy the property to the time I even get it approved for density, and then it takes me another 18 months to permit, and then it takes me another 5 years to build the thing, or let's say I rapid build it, and I build it in 25 weeks, right? Which I wrote this article that says it's basically impossible. You know, moving the material and stuff to do stuff at scale is really hard, right? Just in terms of, but if I did that, that's how long the time horizon, how long the carry. Right? I'm paying interest on that opportunity cost. But if I just had to sit on it and this was stacking and I had the time to do that, all that cost benefit gets transferred to the buyer, right? Because all my risk gets packaged into this timeline for delivery because there's so much uncertainty. But if I had if I knew every part of the process was certain and had a taker or there was a small margin for error, then I can reliably know that I'm going to get my 15, 20%, and I'll be happy with that, right? But it's the unknown that causes me to price all these things and do all these things.
Yeah.
It's the uncertainty. It's the uncertainty. But if I can find a reliable, true path, I'll bank on that all day, right? It's money. We buy bonds. It's expected returns versus risk.
Right.
And so what happens is there's so much risk for a developer to bring a property to market now that the public doesn't understand. They just think they're greedy, but it's not. It's risk. I lost my shorts. You should have seen me when I was holding this, through pandemic, and there was no one buying anything, and I couldn't get my map signed, right? And I'm earning interest on and I can't even get a tenant because, those are the types of things that happen with these black swan events. No wonder why no one's bringing housing. So the structures that bring housing are like the RFI for the military, right? Behind the fence stuff, because it's funded, that, and the margin is there. And again, even with the margin priced in, they're pricing $1 million a house. So.
Yeah. So this was a great conversation. I knew it was going to be. Ryan, thank you so much. No, thank you so much for coming out. If people want to know more about Pinpoint Guam, about data points, they want to find out more about the technology behind REALFacts, where can they get in touch with you?
Well, right now we're REALFactsGuam.com, right? That's the platform. There's a basic layer open to the public, but we're really trying to keep it to stakeholders right now just because the way the project is engineered is for experts to a degree. But PinpointGuam.com, you can see kind of our list of services, and then we have a Instagram, Pinpoint Guam, and our podcast data points is on there. And that's where we talk to smart guys like you. And I make myself look smart, and I learn a lot in comparison, right? So that's kind of I put my arm around people who are smarter than me. I get thrown in by association. So cheers to you guys for making me look good.
No, thank you for coming out. Charlie, thank you for being a guest host on our second episode on this entrepreneurship series. Looking forward to more guests and more discussions like this.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Rob, for doing all this. It really, it really helps. And I replay back a lot of your episodes, and there's a lot of great information. So I would say that for those who have caught one episode, I would go back to all the episodes because you may not take away everything, but there's a lot of information from the guests that you've had on. So congratulations on that one, Rob.
Well, thank you.
Don't just watch the clips.
Yeah. and you as well. You've had some really local, diverse guests, which also share their personal experience, which is always good. Personal experience really goes a long way as well.
Yeah, you and the Celestine Prophecy.
Oh, yes.
He's one of my first guests, actually. When I was
my first guest.
So there you go, Charlie. You and Rodney Washington. Right?
Yes.
To our audience, thank you for listening. Be sure to follow, like, share, and subscribe. Also, check out Ryan Mummert at Pinpoint Guam, REALFacts, and check out his Data Points podcast on YouTube. And don't forget to check out my Innovate column in the Pacific Daily News every other Friday of each month. See you next time, and remember, whether you're at work, at home, or at play, always innovate. Thank you.